Hello, welcome to Divorce Not Murder, the podcast where we hopefully make divorce more appealing than homicide. I'm your host, Kristina Ivy, mental health therapist, mom of two, and new addition to the ranks of the recently divorced. We've also got Robert Taylor here, Idaho-based divorce attorney and step-parent extraordinaire.
Hey, Christina.
Hello.
How you doing tonight?
I'm doing well, thank you. How about yourself?
I'm good. What are we talking about tonight?
Well, you've had a busy week, it sounds like, doing is it something not typical in your practice, right? Some adoptions?
Yeah, I mean, that's typical. It's not as common as the divorce, but it's the other thing that I do outside of divorce.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Well,
got
what do
to
you want
go
to
to
share about that?
yeah, I got to go to court this week for an adoption hearing. Adoptions are literally my favorite thing and the best thing that happened in the courthouse. And I don't know if it's because of the nature of divorce, where you're dividing families. So in adoptions, you're bringing families together. Everyone's happy. The judge is happy. This one was awesome. It was two kids. Stepdad was adopting. Uh, Everyone parks in the same parking lot, so we all walked out of the courthouse together, and they had given him a little bag. I saw them get out of the car, and uh, it was a little gift bag. It had a hat that said "Dad" on it, and he put it on, and he was all
Oh,
excited. Got to drive away, all wearing the hat and happy. And I'd asked him if these were the first kids that he had, and he said yes. And just get to bring families together and share good moments, and in the family
yeah.
law word, it's few and far between, and a lot of times there are days where you don't really know if it was a win or not. And when there are wins, you celebrate them. And there's every day in adoption court is a win, and especially I think with the step parents, any adoption, you got someone that's not a parent by the very nature of it being an adoption, stepping up and taking that responsibility, filling that role. It's just good to be a small part of it.
Yeah. And you've mentioned that you don't do a lot of contested divorce, but even with uncontested divorces, you mentioned, it's dividing families, it's dividing assets. There can be a contentious nature to it. People can have big feelings. I bet this really balances out the other side of the scales for you emotionally in the work that you do.
Yeah, I mean, if I was to divorce my wife, best case scenario, we're each going to spend 50% of the time with that kid, right? I'd miss my kid all the time. And even when they're good divorces, what's uncontested divorces mostly are, you still, the family units dividing. The parents that love their kids are going to be spending less time with their kids. Um,
Hmm.
and there's a lot of good things come out of divorce, but it's still kind of sad sometimes. But adoption's like all happy. You got someone that isn't a parent that wants to be the parent, that wants to step into that role and take care of that kid. And a lot of times, especially when it's a step parent adoption, that relationship has existed for a number of years, and so they're just formalizing it, making it official, just filling out some paperwork, right? They're not these aren't like a brand new
Yeah.
baby going to a parent case, right? Like this is someone that probably has a deadbeat dad. Though I've done some moms, but a lot of times it's a deadbeat dad situation, and new husband, step parent is active, involved for a number of years,
Hmm.
and wants to become that kid's father. And it's just fun to be a part of
I
for the
I
whole family.
am yeah, and I'm very, very personally familiar with your role in this situation. So for folks who don't know, you said, these are adoptions where the step parent has been in their life for years. You actually facilitated the adoption of my older brother, my half brother, but my older brother, and my dad.
I did. Would you like to hear a fun fact about that adoption?
Sure.
So, when my daughter was born, I decided I was going to take 6 months off of practicing law. Um, when she was born, it took me 6 months to like clear my caseload and wrap up all the cases. So then, I had this ideal that she's going to be born and then I was done for 6 months, but it took me 6 months to get to that point. And when those 6 months ended, I decided to keep going. So, I mean, I didn't take any new cases for about 18 months. Um, my,
Wow.
da- my daughter was born in 2017. When I did my taxes this year, I just decided to look at, how much profit I've made each year. And I was going through my client load, like caseload or my client sheet. In the year 2018, I had exactly one client, and it was your father.
Oh.
That was it. That was the only time I was in the courtroom that year, was to do your brother's adoption.
Well, you made our family very, very happy and put the legal stamp on something that was already there the whole time. My
Yeah,
dad,
that,
our dad, had, been in my brother's life since he was a year old. So and like you had mentioned, his biological father wasn't in the picture at all. And I think when this adoption happened, my brother was in his 30s, right? Like some people are like, why even do it at that point? But it's just, there's something really reaffirming of like, it's never too late to just really make the statement that this is family.
yeah, I have a case right now where the person to be adopted is in her 60s. I don't really
Oh,
know why they
wow.
Yeah, I don't know why they waited. They did. It's not so. Your brother's adoption counts as an adult adoption as well as a step parent adoption. And it's not uncommon to see about like a 19, 18 to 20 get adopted because maybe there was a custody order in place, or maybe there was a support order in place, or maybe the bio parent wasn't going to allow that adoption to take place. But now that that person gets 18, the 19, the 20, that the parent doesn't really have a say, and so you'll see the adoption happen then. So yeah, but so the 30s and definitely the 60 is a little uncommon, but
Mm-hmm.
still, and even then, I would say you got decades then, right, of this father, most of the time father kid relationship, and just really making it formal, making it official. Um,
Yeah.
and there,
And
I
there's
mean, there
legal
are
implications of that too, right? Like
there are
wills.
um, yes, or without a will. So I mean, obviously it's a little different with a minor, right? Like if you adopt a minor, like you're that person's legal parent, uh, you are responsible for them. If you get divorced, you might have to pay support. There's also the chance that you would get awarded custody. So now you're talking about a situation where you're paying child support to a parent for a kid that's not yours, but legally you've adopted and that is your father or your kid in the eyes of the law. Or you're taking the kid away from the bio parent if you have a custody arrangement. So it's a little unusual. Outside of that, once you turn 18, really the only, and this works when you're under 18 too, but it's the only thing over 18 is that now you can inherit uh, under the laws of that state as if you were a
Mm.
natural child. Um, it's not a big deal. They can inherit from you too, or you can inherit from the kids. It's not as big of a deal because you could have a will that takes that place. And so sometimes people are like, "Hey, I want to do this, so if I die, my kid gets all my stuff because he's my kid. I love him. I've been there." And it's like, "Well, hey, we can
Yeah.
do the adoption, but we could also do a will if you don't want to do it." And most of the time
Mm-hmm.
they do want to do it. But like I have a will. I also have two step kids, and my will specifically states that all three kids are to be treated equal and divide all of my estate into threes or thirds if something should happen to me.
So even
But
if you weren't married to their mother, like you would have your will would dictate who
yeah,
it
so
would you
before,
didn't have to have any sort of custodial
yeah, I
thing
mean, you could leave
happening.
anything to anyone you want. I could do a will today, leaving everything to you.
You
But
could
like,
leave it
no,
to your
when
horse.
yeah, so I don't have a horse. But before we got married, I had
Yet.
my life insurance. At that point, uh, I didn't have a lot of money, but I do have a life insurance policy. So my will stated that it would get divided in half. Uh, Half of it would be to use to fund the education of my wife's two kids. The other half would be to fund my nieces and nephews' education. Now that I'm married, I have a kid. I have real life people to support. So if I die, it's going to go to my wife, and then to be half of my three kids next. And so you can take care of someone under your will without doing the adoption. Um, it just is another layer, I guess, or another benefit. Um, Really, at that point, it's just about making that love official. I mean, I don't know that there is a real life benefit to adopting an adult other than that
Is the
officialness.
process cost prohibitive, or what would people be looking at if they wanted to undertake something like that?
Yeah, I don't think it's cost prohibitive, but people have their wide range. I mean, I give a
Yeah.
quote which I feel is very reasonable. I love doing adoptions. I think they're fun. They're quick to do administratively. So I probably do offer a discount on them, but sometimes people are like, whoa, that's a lot. And if you're talking about like your dad's case, trying to adopt a 30-year-old, it doesn't really matter. That's not money they really have to spend, right? But then
Yeah.
if you're trying to adopt an 8-year-old, people are more interested then, right? Because what if something happens to bio mom? They don't want to rip up that family, right? Like if something happens to bio mom, it's going to be tragic. But now the bio mom or the kid's going to be taken away from who she thinks is her dad because there's no formal, official legal relationship there, and so they
Mm-hmm.
might be more willing to pay in that case. But people ask this all the time: is this something I can do myself, or can I just go get some paperwork and do it? And I try really hard not to take money from people if I don't need to. But the adoption itself is very simple to do from a procedure standpoint or a law standpoint. But
Mm-hmm.
from a technical standpoint, it's very specific. I mean, we're talking about sometimes we're terminating parental rights. We're talking about taking someone's parental rights away from them. We're talking about another person being entrusted to be a legal parent of a kid or making a kid
Mm-hmm.
this person's kid or this parent's kid. And the court's very aware of this responsibility. And also, the court doesn't want to have it be undone. And so it has to be done a certain way. Like the I's have to be dotted, the T's have to be crossed. These documents, at least in Idaho, have to be signed in front of a judge. It needs to be this form. It needs to be this format. And really, like, especially if you have a termination case, if the parental rights have been terminated, or an adult case, like the court wants to do the adoption, right? Like the court understands
Mm-hmm.
what's happening. They know that this is in the best interest. They want this kid to have two parents, and here's an individual showing up and saying, I want to be this kid's parent. They want to do it, but the law says that you have to establish certain things for the record. And so really what you're doing is just showing up and establishing that record. Like I tell my clients, because sometimes they get nervous or they've never been to court. They don't really know what to expect. And it's like, look, the judge is going to do this, but before he or she does, we have to establish the record. We have to give the judge everything that's required by law to make this so he can make this decision.
So they
And if you
can
don't,
stamp that seal on it and.
yeah. And if you don't know what that procedure is or what those steps are, or have never been to court, like it's very challenging. And so like that's
Mm.
where I think the benefit of having an attorney is. I mean, you have to have something signed. The judge has to watch you in Idaho sign a document. Most people don't know how to get in front of a judge to have them watch them sign a signature or sign a document.
Okay.
And then even if you figure that out, like you want those you have to have the right documents, you have to be in the right format, and you have to bring the right everything to court. You don't want to get to court and get kicked out because you don't have the right documents and have to come back and try it again.
So people could do it on their own, but there's certainly benefits to having legal representation, and
Yeah.
it's not that cost prohibitive in
Yeah,
general.
it's like hiring a tour guide. I mean, you could go hike Mount Everest by yourself, but you're probably going to have a better time in life if you hire someone that's climbed Mount Everest before to help you get your bag up the high, up that mountain and
Sure. Are
cook
you a
dinner for
Sherpa?
you.
Is that what
I'm
we're
not. I'm
like?
not, but I mean, one of my really good buddies is climbing Mount Rainier.
Nice.
I'm sorry, he's done Rainier. He's doing Denali. I think he's doing it next week.
Wow,
And so
Alaska.
yeah. And so, he's like, man, it costs a lot of money to hire these people, but I'd rather hire someone that's done it 100 times, knows where to camp, knows what to
Hmm.
cook, has all the secrets figured out, than go out there and try it myself the first time I've ever seen the mountain. And it's like that with the adoption, right? Like you could do it
Yeah.
yourself, but it's definitely worth having the assistance of someone that knows how to do it to get it done the first time correctly. So
Well,
also,
that's very cool.
yeah, and also I want to just talk about adult adoptions real quick, at least in Idaho. Um,
Yeah.
adults can be adopted. Anybody can adopt anybody, um, but you have to have had during the person to be adopted's minority a year of a parent relationship being formed while that person was a minor, or
Mm.
the court has to otherwise establish that there's a family relationship here. And so, yeah, your brother's 30. Obviously, he was with his dad when he was one. So you got 17 years there of having this relationship when the kid was a minor. that exceeds a year, that's going to not be a problem at all. Um,
So do you
you
see those situations play out in other sort of interesting ways too? Like say, like if God forbid, but I hope that nothing ever happens to Lance, but if he were to pass away and I had entered into a new marriage and that person had a familial, they had a parental relationship with my kids, they'd be able to like be adopted by that person once, right?
Yeah,
Or
potentially. I mean, so like I'm never going to adopt my wife's kids, right? Because they have every other week of custody. Their dad's in the picture. He's a good dad. Uh, but something should happen to him,
mhm.
and for some reason my kids wanted to be adopted, and we would we could do that. You know, maybe it's 10 years
Yeah.
from now, maybe it's next year. The only context of that is in Idaho, an individual over the age of 12 has to consent to the adoption. So one kid's 14, one kid's 17, so they would both have to agree to that adoption. And if that was something they wanted, then I would do it. But we very clearly meet that year in minority. So, say I should die, and then maybe I die
Livy.
5 years. Yeah, well, no, I don't want to talk about someone adopting Livy, but let's just say I die 5 years from now, so both kids are over 18. Their dad dies 5 years from that, so now we're talking about 10 years down the road. My wife gets remarried. She's married to this dude for 20 years, and they decide like, hey, let's have stepdad adopt us, right? Like, we're talking about 15 years from now. My daughter's 17. She's going to be 35, and when this is all happening, that would be very hard to convince the court that they had this relationship. They're like the father-daughter relationship when they met at 30 or something like that.
Which
But
maybe is just that important reminder that although having the law recognize important and loving connections, it's not necessary either. Like we as people, we as individuals choose our family, choose the people that we love, and you can have that relationship without sort of a legal definition around it.
yeah, I mean, my kids think they have four parents. Their dad's remarried, and they think they have four parents, and everything's great. And like I mentioned a few minutes ago, my will, they're specifically included. Now, if I died tomorrow without a will, everything would go to my spouse. Should she predecease me, or we die together, everything would go to my daughter, the youngest, the one that we have in common. But my
Hmm.
will specifically names all three of them to be treated equally. And I could have options where my daughter gets half my stuff and the older to get a quarter of stuff. Um,
Hmm.
but like that's a way that I've set up to protect them and treat them in
Sure.
as a natural kid to the extent that I want to. And we've started 529 college funds for all three kids. The money gets put into the accounts as we're going to pay for tuition. Not obligated. I don't have to support my wife's kids. And I got it. We're a family and it's our money, but ultimately I set up the accounts and I'm putting the money from my paycheck into that account, but I'm not obligated to. I could put all the money into my youngest kid's account if I wanted to. And I'm not even obligated to put money in her account, right? Like I'm choosing to.
Hmm.
And I'm
Hmm.
choosing to, in all rights, all access, everything, my three
So
kids
you
are
act with
treated
your own
equal.
sort of personal integrity towards your family and
I don't
and
know
make
if
those
it's
decisions.
yeah, I don't know if it's personal integrity. It's just kind of the environment that we've established in our house. I mean, my parents, the kids think they have four parents. I think I have three kids.
Yeah.
A lot of times, the only time it gets brought up is, people are like, how many kids you have? I'll say I have three kids. And they say, how old? And I'll say it's 17, 14, and 6. And then they're like, well, how come you have, that's a big gap. And then
Yeah.
it's like, well, my
You
wife
don't
had
really
two
get
kids.
into it unless questions are asked for more clarification.
Yeah,
You
it's like
don't
my
just
wife.
on the front end be like, I have two stepkids and I have one biological kid.
Yeah, I've never called them stepkids. Someone would say, "What's that gap for?" And I'll say, "Well, she had two kids when we met, but that's about it." Um, I'm not allowed to
And
tell
they
them
call you
that.
dad, right? Like they also call
No,
you dad or no?
no, they call me Rob.
Okay.
Uh, there was a little bit of a period where uh, Connor wanted to call me dad for a bit, but never really caught on. Or I think sometimes he would slip and call dad, but didn't want to admit that he'd messed up, so he just kept going. Um, but that's all right. Uh,
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of funny. They do call me Rob. So the only people who call me Rob historically have been my sisters and any girl that I've dated. Have all decided by themselves to call me Rob, with the exception of the woman that I married. Uh, but
Does
uh,
she call you Robert?
she does. Uh,
Okay.
But the first time I met the kids, we went to a concert. Courtney picked me up from work because I had driven myself to work that day, and she lived someplace else. So she got the kids, came and got me, and I got in the car, and they're like, "This is Robert," or she said, "This is Robert," and one of them said, "Can we call you Rob?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And they were like, their dad was living with another guy at the time, and his name was Grumpy Rob, and so they were they want to call me Rob, and I was like, that's cool, and it just kind of seemed like it fit because my sisters and all the girls that I've ever dated were the only people to call me Rob, and so the kids got added to that exclusive list.
Divorce, Not Murder is sponsored by Taylor Law Amp Mediation, PLLC. Idaho divorce clients can find Robert at www.taylorlm.com.